Hi folks, this is all the fruit. I'm in Heidelberg, Germany. It's the first days of April, and actually this video was supposed to be the last video about fruit foraging in March in Germany, but by the end of March I didn't have time and also didn't have so many fruit. So I continued collecting, and now it's the 6th of April. And yeah, let's see what fruit you can and should, and what fruit you maybe should not forage in Germany in late March or early April after a reasonably mildish winter. Yeah, check out the 3 other videos about fruit foraging in March. They have a lot more different fruit. So let's see what we've got here. Well, here is a Vitaceae, or a grapevine relative. This is Partenopsis tricuspidata from East Asia. A very interesting plant for human subsistence. Actually, the fruit, which are tiny grapes, basically like vine grapes, are not so good to eat because they have oxalate crystals. So basically eating them is like eating a little cactus with spines, but the spines are on the inside. But what people did in East Asia in older times is tap the stem in spring right now, get a lot of nice sap, and basically make syrup and wine and other stuff. Basically in East Asia this was used like the maple is being used in Canada. Even the leaves look a little bit similar. Well, the fruit, I showed you some real grapes, Vitis vinifera, in a previous video. They were not edible. I think maybe a very dry autumn and a very dry and maybe very cold or very dry and very warm winter could let a couple grapes survive, but this winter was not one of them. But the much less edible grapes of Partenopsis survived on this south-facing wall, and pretty much the whole wall in early April was covered with mummified little grapes. Look at that. It's basically, yeah, mummified, like the thin flesh has become a dry skin, and the seeds, well, the seeds, which are pretty big, haven't changed much. So Partenopsis, you could forage the fruit, but they're just as inedible as they were in autumn when the stuff ripened. Here we have the snowberry, Symphoricarpus albus, I think. Most of the strawberries, most of the snowberry shrubs in Heidelberg had no fruit. I think those are some out-of-season fruit which must have developed in late autumn or maybe even in winter. But as you can see, most of them are still good, and they were a lot more plump when I picked them a week ago. Now they have just lost some moisture in my dry apartment, and maybe they got a little bit more brown. But basically when I picked them, they looked more or less like they would look in November. In the last video I had some chestnut, Corylus avellana, and for some reason, I did it again. Hazelnut, Corylus avellana, but I called it chestnut once. That's why here I'm showing it again. So folks, this is not a chestnut. You might still be able to find edible chestnuts in March or April in Heidelberg if you dig in the forest floor, but this is no chestnut, this is a hazelnut. And this is from Corylus avellana. And here I have some fruit of Corylus colurna. And actually hazelnuts, sometimes if they are not too much rotted, they will look pretty much edible and intact even in April. But whenever I cracked open such hazelnuts from last year, they were rotten inside. Yeah. Nothing inside. Don't crack nuts with your teeth, folks. I was pretty much sure this one is already rotten. That's why it was softer and easier to crack. Well, Yeah, I should make a dedicated video about this one. This is Ilex aquifolium, one of the few evergreen native species here in Germany. And yeah, the fruit are not very tasty. They're actually so untasty that even the birds left them alone all the way into April. Actually, this is one of the species which bets on the possibility, on the quite certain probability before the climate change that there will be a snow cover in winter, and animals will, especially birds, will go for any fruit that's on the trees, no matter how tasteless. That's why those fruit are much more durable than the juicy, tasty berries. They will be on the shrubs all winter and into spring, and basically hope that some birds are hungry enough to eat them. Similar thing goes for Crategus. This is one of the native Crategus, maybe Oxyacantha and Monogyna. We'll see in a moment. Well, this Ilex, Ilex aquifolium, the berries are not considered edible but toxic. Crategus, the fruit are edible. They're actually like small medlars or small apples. How many seeds? One seed, so this is, oh wait, no. 2 seeds stuck together. Oh, what now? No. Okay, 1 seed, so it's the Crategus monogyna group and not so much the Crategus oxyacantha group. But the hawthorn, yes, you can eat the fruit well into spring. If they are well preserved, it depends on the weather in autumn and winter. Here's some Crategus cruscalia, an ornamental species with not very tasty fruit, but because they are not very tasty, they are quite coriaceous or leather-like, so they made it well into spring. Not many fruit, but at least a few. Remember, it's April after all. Well, this is Berberis julianae, and I had it in the last video, and I said something like Berberis beali. Actually, there is no Berberis beali, except if Mahonia beali was called Berberis beali. This is Berberis julianae, so another mistake from the last video. And here, this is probably Berberis candidula, a similar species but with much smaller leaves. And well, Berberis julianae, I found a couple Berberis with a lot of fruit, also from other Berberis species. This Berberis candidula, I was able to find only 1 fruit, but it's already flowering, so there will be new fruit in a couple months. So Berberis, a lot of species are considered a little bit toxic, but if you want to find fruit in spring, in winter or spring, better check Berberis julianae than Berberis candidula. Viburnum davidii from East Asia. I wondered when the fruit will be ripe and soft and juicy. I was there in summer, I was in early autumn, I was there in late autumn, I was there in winter, and now I'm there in April, and the fruit are still, well, when I picked them, they were still metallic blue. Now they're a little bit shriveled up, but still nowhere closer to being ripe than they were half a year ago. Well, the brambles which grow on the blackberries, here I could find 1 which developed from a flower in winter. And some years you have flowers on the brambles in winter, but you don't get so many fruit. And yeah, on this one there was only 1 edible fruit, and it's already mummified. So yeah, for blackberries it's a little bit too early. Well, another rosaceae. This is something feral, I don't know what. Looks like something from the Canine group, maybe a hybrid with some ornamental rose. Very thick and plump rose hips. Okay, but I picked it already days ago. Well, I think here you can see very well the itchy hairs which are inside the rose hips or the rose fruit. Come on. I must get the hairs into the sun. Those white, shiny hairs, they are like itching powder or little cactus clockets. You put them on somebody's skin and they're like itching powder. You eat the wrong part of the fruit and it's like eating a cactus. But I ate the right part of the fruit. I didn't get anywhere close to the seed, so it's like some very dry rosehip jam. Well, here we have another viburnum species. You wouldn't think that those are closely related. They look completely different, but they are being put in the same genus. However, I think that viburnum should be separated into several different genera. And this one is edible. I don't like it so much, but for the Russians and Ukrainians, the Russians call it kalina. I think the Ukrainians maybe also. It's one of the most important wild fruit for foraging. Well, it smells and tastes quite a lot of puke, but they say once you make jam from it, the smell and taste of puke disappear and it gets very tasty. And this still looks intact enough for me to try it. Yeah. Still tastes like puke. So it's, my breath smells a lot of puke. Well, so it's still as edible as in the day when it ripened. I guess if I could collect enough, I could make some tasty jam out of them. Another very famous and very popular and probably very healthy fruit, which smells and tastes like puke, is the sea buckthorn. It's not related to the buckthorn. It is Hippophaea rhamnoides and it's related to Eleagnus and not to buckthorn. A very interesting plant. It grows in huge amounts in coastal areas, and like in the 80s and 90s, the Germans planted it everywhere for birds in hedgerows. The government was planting it everywhere in Germany. Now I think they kind of stopped because they realized it's a coastal plant. But it did very well in inland locations when it was planted. It's very good for birds and also very good for human consumption, but the fresh fruit, they taste and smell like puke. Very different type of puke from the viburnum, but still quite puke-like. Well, there are just a couple puny fruit on those branches, but on this plant, on this same specimen, they were almost as puny and almost as few in autumn. So not much has changed since autumn. It's very important. It was very important for human subsistence in hunter-gatherer times because throughout the winter and into the spring, you could go to where it grew, especially in coastal areas, and collect a ton of the, juice, pulp, mush, whatever. As you can see, it's very hard to pick the intact fruit. But if you have any type of container, you can basically pick the juice and skins of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of fruit in one day and end up with a couple liters of very vitamin C rich and sour, but still more or less tasty and very healthy. Vitamin C rich drink you could drink in the winter and spring times. And even nowadays, it's being cultivated for its taste and for the health properties of its berries. So, folks, this was maybe the last. Oh, now the sun is shining here. Now half of my fruit are completely invisible. This was maybe the last, cumulative video of about a lot of fruit you can forage in Germany in March, because it's really getting warm. It's getting over 20 degrees now, so I think most of those fruit which are still outside will start to rot. And also I already covered, I think, over 100 fruit in those 4 videos. 100 fruit to find in March and early April in Germany is not too bad. So I guess if I make any more videos in April, they will be more probably about single fruit. Okay, folks, so this is what you can forage in early spring or in spring in Germany. Just don't confuse them and don't forage the ones which are toxic or not good for you. Stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from the beautiful city of Heidelberg. And don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe.